Worries. Well, again, thank you so much for joining. We are together for a very short time, but essentially what we are covering in the next about 35 minutes is, what Agile HR is and helping you really understand what agility in HR can really do. So, the slide deck that you have in front of the slide deck that you really have in front of you is the crux of the webinar today, right? So it's really trying to figure out how HR can become more flexible, adaptive, collaborative, and responsive. So let me just maybe ask you one question, Han. How about you take the opportunity to give us a little bit of an understanding about you in the chat? Let us know if you kind of work in the HR department, and if you do, just put it a yes in the chat. And then maybe think about whatever department you work in, whether it's HR or you kind of function as a people manager. If that particular department was to be an animal, which animal would that be?
Animal. Hmm. Interesting
Yeah.
question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm. Do you want me to write that in the chat?
It's okay. You've unmuted yourself, so if you feel comfortable, talking it out loud, feel free to do that and not use the chat.
Okay. So I personally I'm not like directly working in the HR department,
Mm-hmm.
but what what I've my job is I've been working with different clients, specifically like HR focus. Like
Okay.
um I have been working with the clients on how to improve the retention, employee engagement, and all that. And so, just to review the progress, the operation process, and the HR recruitment process and stuff. So, just to help them to understand like what needs to be done and what can be improved. So, I work very closely with HR department, but not under the HR department, if that makes sense.
It absolutely makes sense. Thanks so much for sharing that. All right, so it looks like you are really closely working with the HR department. You kind of take care of the process improvement side of maybe this particular organization where you are. So maybe let's just think about, your area of function or your core department. If that was to be an animal, what animal would that be? What animal comes to your mind?
Um, hmm, I never thought about it.
Interesting, right? Giving you a
Right.
different approach to look at things.
What kind of mix? But I will say, hmm, I would say a horse. Like,
Interesting. And why would you say that, Han? Like we took some time to think about it. Why would you say a horse?
well, one of the major things I'm pro in project management and also
Mhm.
the trainer for the clients. So
Right.
deadlines, timelines are something that huge. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been like I deal with deadlines, timelines for the clients or for myself all the time in my job. So we
Right.
chasing the deadline like a horse. Like we would just want to focus on the finish line if you were racing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then a horse is the main job, the main focus for the horse is you have to win the race and you have to your goal is the finish line, right? So this is something like I was thinking about it and it's okay, this is something I'm going to chase for the finish line. I need to chase, let's shoot for the timeline, deadline. So this is something that seems like it's a horse for me.
Amazing. Well, Han, again, thanks so much for sharing that. And I think, from your perspective, it kind of identifies very well. The job of the horse is to get to the finish line when they are in the race. So the behavior of the horse really is to be able to finish the task and get to the finish line. To be able to get to the finish line, to finish the task, there are certain other aspects that the horse has to perform. So essentially, what we were trying to uncover here is behaviors, right? A behavior a horse demonstrates to be able to chase a task or, be participating in a race and get to the finish line. So, you come from a project management background, Han. You work with, process improvement. You support the HR teams to improve their processes. So essentially, that is what Agile in a nutshell is, right? So the slide right in front of you is just that. Agile in nutshell is nothing but the behavior or a mindset to really support the processes that you already have and make them become more agile. Thank you so much for turning on your camera, Han. I can see you now, and it feels nice that I am talking to, someone on the screen. So that's really what we're going to be covering, Han. But in case you have any questions, so I think because it's just you and me right now, so we can kind of have a more open question answer discussion towards the end in regards to some of the questions that you may have. But this is what we are really covering in the next 20-25 minutes is why HR needs to evolve. You may already know that because you're already supporting a lot of your clients on that. What Agile HR really means, some of the challenges that we can solve through agility, right? Or changing to an agile mindset. What is HR for agile and agile for HR? I'll also share some two, examples with you, which are real world agile transformation examples, some practical steps that you can take to move in that direction, and then we can look at question and answers as well. We'll share the copy of the slide deck with you, so don't worry about taking any notes. And then, yeah, of course, you can save your questions for the end, or in case you have any questions in between, you can let me know. A little bit about me. I am based out of Toronto in Canada. I am an
Mm.
executive leadership and transformation coach. And I'm also a certified facilitator through ICAGL to conduct the Agility in HR workshop. I am one of the trainers with Agilizing, and that's why we are conducting this webinar for you today. And it's nice to meet you. You already mentioned this to me that you kind of are not directly working in HR, but you're kind of working, with clients where you're kind of
But
supporting them with process improvement. So, amazing work there, Han. Thank you so much for that. Now, as you are working in the space that you're working on and with some of the clients that you're working with, do you feel that your clients are telling you that there is a need that they have to change their processes or they've been pushed from their own organizations to improve their processes, move faster, because their organization demands that?
yeah, one of the big things, one of the clients that I have worked with, they had a lot of manual work because if we want to talk about HR, we have different documents, different data analysis that needs to be done, and they did it all in manual. So that was a challenge for them. And this
Correct.
is something that they asked for. The first thing that they asked us is there any way that we can automate the process? So I
Mm-hmm.
think because they know that they need to move faster, like what you said, and manual work, of course, creates a lot of burden for them because they don't want to, if
Absolutely.
the process can be automated, then they want to be automated so they can spend the time on more important things. So this is one of the
Absolutely.
requests that I have heard. Not only for that specific client, but like most of the clients that I've worked with, they said the same thing.
Yeah, so traditionally that's how I would say HR used to function because we were more of an administrative department traditionally, right? So a lot of the systems and the processes were manual, and I think organizations are now realizing the need to make it more, more system focused. And I think there is a reason why organizations want that. And you may already be aware about it. We are working in a VUCA world. Things around us are changing rapidly, right? There's uncertainty, there's complexity, there's ambiguity. There is external environment pressure, which could be political, growth, development. There's AI. AI has come up and has rapidly taken over. So things are changing, and this is something that is not gonna, stop. Like this will always keep changing. So essentially, that is the reason why, we need to be more agile is we need to respond to these changing market demands. And one of the challenges you very readily explain that these organizations who are manual are now realizing the need that they have to be more system focused because they may not be able to pull out data, informed decisions because they don't have a system to support that. And to be able to meet the market needs, they need maybe a data informed decision, right? They have to drive innovation, right? So if you want to keep up in the market and stay in the market, you need to be innovative, creative. You need, system for that. You need to adapt. You need to tackle complex challenges with confidence. You need to deliver greater value to customers, strengthen the teamwork and collaboration, right? Improve your speed and efficiency of work. Make faster and smarter decisions, embrace continuous learning and improvement, stay future ready, and a lot of other factors, right? So these are some of the factors which I think because of the evolving external, you know, focus, a lot of organizations are now realizing that if they have to stay in market and stay as an organization which is growing and developing, they have to focus on all these areas. And I'm not sure, Han, if some of your clients have already shared similar things with you, but this is one of the reason why a need for organization has come up to be more agile. So at this point, let
Okay.
me ask you a question. Like, what do you understand by, agile, right? You do come from a project management background, looks like. What do you think agile is?
The first thing came to my mind is we have to break it down into different pieces. So obviously, if you talk about, there's a lot of different process in HR, like recruitment, L&D. These two are big ones. And obviously, we cannot really change the whole process all at once. So this is when you ask me about Agile, the first thing that came to me is that, okay, we have to break it into different areas or phases for that.
Yeah, absolutely bang on, Han there, bang on. And I think that is, you very rightly identified the difference as well. I'm just going to go one slide back because I skipped that slide really to move further. And I'm just trying to change the way I approach this session because I just have you and, you kind of understand project management already because of the background you come from. So that's why I'm just skipping the slide. But that's essentially, you rightly identified what Agile is and what Agile mindset and framework is. So it's a little different than project management, where you have your traditional waterfall approach, where you've identified what the project would be and you go through the project in a waterfall way towards the end of the project. Agile, if you really see it in front of you, the picture there, it's a cyclic approach. So it's really a way of working that helps team adapt quickly to change and improve, continuously. So it's a continuous cycle where you plan, you design, you develop, you test, you deploy, and then you review, and then try and see if it made sense. If not, you go through the same cycle all over again. So yes, it is breaking down things into smaller pieces, which helps you to move faster. But it also has that cyclic loop where you're able to continuously put the feedback into the process and improvise the process. It officially began in 2001 with the introduction of Agile Manifesto, which IC Agile came up with. The whole idea was it was created to promote a more flexible, collaborative, and adaptive approach to project management. So, it's an evolution of the way we looked at project management, which was a traditional waterfall approach. Focuses on continuous improvement, and you could have you very likely said that, and you see that from the cyclic diagram we have in front of us. It focuses on teamwork, so no siloed approaches. It's teamwork, collaboration, delivering value in small iterative stages, which you very rightly said. And right now, although it started in the IT and the software space, right now it's being used across industries because we've seen the value it brings, right? So it's being used across industries, in technology, in HR space, in operations and business transformation. A lot of organizations are using agile approaches. They may just not know that they're using the agile approaches, right? So that's also something that is happening right now, where a lot of organizations are already agile. Just skimming through this slide quickly, we just went through it. You know, we being in HR, I think there is a role HR can play in agility. I'll tell you why we in HR can play that role in agility because we are the ones responsible for people processes, right? So HR shapes the people practices, systems, and policies. And essentially that is what drives transformation. So for a transformation to happen, yes, you have to work through your processes and policies, but ultimately it's your stakeholders, which is the people who are going to be leading those transformations. So HR plays a very strong role in agility, right? We think that it's an IT thing, like agile is an IT word. No, it really applies, as we understood, across industries and enterprise wide. This is some, I'll share a little bit of research with you. Deloitte has conducted some very recent researches, and these researches kind of really show that a lot of directors, leadership people, HR people want organizations to go agile. Reasons being some which we already saw in the previous slide, which is, the ever evolving environment around us. So 88% believe they need to redesign their organization to be more agile. We know that, AI is rapidly changing the way we function. And, if we as an organization are not agile, I think we're not going to catch up to what AI is going to do to the environment. And organizations that are not going to catch up, may face to exist, right? So that is something that could happen. 95% of the leaders say they need, their talent agility is essential. You mentioned about some of the recruitment work that you've done and recruitment practices. I think there is a lot of opportunity there. 80% of leaders are actively working to redeploy people and capabilities more quickly around the organization. So this is some of the recent research that has been done by Deloitte in the last 1 or 2 years. But through all the research that has happened, it shows that organizations rapidly need to change their systems and processes to make them more agile, make them more collaborative, make them more team focused. And as I said, we'll see some examples as well of some of the organizations that have done it and how things change for them. So essentially, if we really talk about why HR wants to go agile, right? We need to be able to provide faster response to change, better employee experience, support the future of work, AI digital transformation, absolutely. Faster talent decisions, increased innovation within HR as well, cross-functional collaboration with other teams, like HR no longer can work as a siloed department, which traditionally it was, but now no longer. Data-driven decision making, very important. A lot of organizations are doing that to be more resilient with the changing, world. Shift to people-centric HR, right? So very important, and we'll see an example on this. And then continuous learning and upskilling, right? So very important if we want to make sure we are keeping up with the external environment, learning and upskilling is very important, and that's what Agile supports. So just a little bit of a chart here in front of you, really trying to show a difference between what used to happen with traditional HR and what Agile HR can really support, right? So traditionally, HR processes have been process heavy. We've been very reactive. So if something went wrong, let's go ahead and correct it, right? The band-aid approach. Long planning cycles. So recruitment, as you know, you've worked with recruitment, it's a long planning cycle. Recruitment can take forever for a position to close. A lot of times you lose candidates through that long journey of the recruitment cycle that we go through. Siloed teams, HR has always functioned on their own. They've never been a collaborative department. Performance reviews, you mentioned about performance reviews as well. A lot of organizations have performance reviews, which are more of an annual kind of reviews, right? There is no continuous feedback approach that is provided. And then fixed solutions, right? So essentially, what we are telling here is we are not talking about that Agile HR is going to be making things faster. What we're talking about is we are just delivering value differently. So it's the same value
Yeah.
delivered differently. Imagine annual reviews becoming continuous feedback. Imagine the kind of motivation and collaboration it's going to create between a manager and the team member. And altogether, it's going to be a very different approach in the way this, individual functions in the organization. Okay,
Yeah, and
I'm not sure, Han, if you have any questions, any thoughts. I saw you were nodding your head. Do you have any thoughts here?
no, I I think one of the major difference is the people centered because right
Absolutely.
now people don't want to wait and like wait wait for 6 months or even 1 year to be able to get what they want. That's why Agile is getting more and more uh, common right now because of that, because people want to have quick spike. This is what we call quick spike. We want to see it like, I give you 2 weeks, I'll give you a month. I need some changes already, right? So that's why you were spot on. We are just trying to be customer centered or people centered. So people don't have to wait for that long.
Absolutely, right? So again, trying changing the mindset to the way the world is evolving and the way people are functioning, right? Very people-centric. So yeah, you rightly identified it there. All right. So again, we've already discussed this on. It's really a mindset change, right? What we are really talking about through all the slides that we went through is we're changing the mindset here, which you've rightly identified because you already work in that space, is moving to a more agile mindset, a mindset that is, that welcomes change, right? So we are welcoming change. We are seeing opportunities. We are focused on what is the possible, right? The art of possible is, as you may say, that's what agile brings, right? There's an opportunity to put the feedback in. It's not that you're going to go through and you rightly identified before as well, piloting, right? Breaking your processes that you're trying to implement into smaller phases, piloting them, putting in the feedback into it in the cyclic loop, and then moving forward. So again, it's a mindset shift that really supports what we are trying to do here. So again, I'll quickly move forward from this one. We've already discussed that previously, but that's what we're trying to do here. So there's the slide in front of you shows you what Agile can do for HR and what HR can do for Agile. So if we talk about Agile for HR, essentially what we're saying is applying Agile principles to the HR processes. And you already identified some of the processes there, the recruitment process and the performance management, system that we discussed. It leads to faster hiring, right? You already identified that, and we spoke about it. Leads to faster hiring. It supports learning and decision making. There's a continuous feedback, performance conversations get better, employee-centric experience, we've just spoken about it. You can have AI-driven insight and people analytics, and it's a flexible and an iterative process. Now, when we look at the other, block there, which is HR for Agile, essentially how HR can really support. So if it's the HR department, how really HR can really support going Agile is enabling the agile ways of working across the business. You've identified some of the examples already where you're working with the clients that you're working on where they are looking to go agile because now they understand the need of being collaborative. They understand the need of being faster, being able to make decisions in a better way. So that's essentially how HR can support an agile transformation. Building the agile leadership and the team, so making sure the leaders understand the need and you kind of building their learning around agile, supporting collaboration and adaptability, driving culture transformation, developing future ready skills, and creating resilience and innovation mindset. So I'll kind of script through that quickly because we already discussed this, but essentially in a nutshell, what we have discussed until now, these are the key features of Agile HR. So it's an employee-centric approach. We just mentioned that. It's an iterative and adaptive process. Cross-functional collaboration is very important. Again, we're talking about moving from a siloed culture to a cross-functional culture. Continuous feedback loop so that we can continuously evolve and make our processes better. There is flexibility, there is responsiveness in the whole way we look at things from an agile lens. data informed decision making, and then empowerment and shared ownership. So, essentially, if that is all that we do, actually what we are trying to create is an empowered organization, an organization that is sharing the outcome, and it's not the very traditional way that, okay, recruitment sits with HR, finance sits with finance department. No, it can be a shared way of looking at things. So that's essentially what, the key features of Agile HR is. So, Horn, you mentioned one of the challenge that you're currently working with one of your client right now. Is there a different challenge that you've worked with a different client, maybe? Because we spoke about, recruitment and performance management, but are there some other challenges that you might have worked with some other clients when it comes to, their process improvement?
Yes. Another thing that I think it's that one of the HR manager came to me and asked me how to improve the recruitment quality
Hmm.
because they found that the people that they hired for the operation um are not as qualified as expected. And then I asked her about how are you going to, I knew they have this strategy meeting for recruitment, and then I asked about that meeting specifically, like what are some of the details, like how does it work? And then I found that the meeting only includes the HR people.
Hmm.
And then I suggest them, okay, maybe you can try and see if you can kind of involve the key person from the operation side and see what are some of the problems that they are facing right now. And then what are some of the problems that the recruitment has right now. So just to close the gap. And then they have worked on it, and I won't say it's perfect now, but the quality it has been improved. And the leadership, the executive team, they're happy about the improvement. So this is something that I think of when you ask me.
Amazing. Thanks, Han, for sharing. I think that's a great example, Han, and that kind of shows how when you try and imbibe an agile mindset. So essentially, what you tried to do was try and bring in an agile mindset into a process which is very traditional, right?
Mhm.
So that really shows how agile mindset can really improve some of the challenges that we face with the HR processes. So these are some examples that I have in front of you, like slow hiring processes. We already spoke about it. Low engagement, employees are not very engaging. A lot of organizations have those issues and problems right now. Resistance to change, that is something that comes up always whenever an organization is going through a change, a resistance comes up. Agile mindset, agile processes, systems can really support with that. Siloed communication, delayed decision making, inefficient onboarding, right? We a lot of time gets feedback that our onboarding is not the best, right? Your new hires may share those feedback. So there is, the opportunity there that Agile is really able to support. Difficulty prioritizing work, burnout, competing demands. This is not an exhaustive list, but I just tried to share a list with you where all really Agile HR can really support some of the pain points, the challenges that organizations really face. But thank you so much, for your example. That was an amazing example, and I'm glad that organization is very happy with the work that you did. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to skip through this slide again. The purpose of the slide was with more participants, but we've already discussed this, right? So you kind of shared some of the issues there already. So let's just maybe quickly skip into and see some real world examples here, Han. The case studies about these examples are available online. When you get the slide deck, you will also be able to see the link and kind of do a further research on some of the, agile transformation work these organizations have done. But ING is one very strongest real world example when it comes to agile transformation. They were primarily inspired by the work Spotify has done. So Spotify is another organization that kind of imbibes the agile culture. They live and I would say they live in breathe and sleep agile. That's how that organization functions, and that's the reason they are what they are. But inspired by the work of Spotify, ING tried to make agile transformation within their own space as well. And these are some of, the improvements that has happened to their HR processes, right? So they tried to make an agile transformation within recruitment and hiring, and this is what they've shared through their case study, that before they had long hiring cycles, they had multiple approval rails, what a lot of organizations have within a recruitment, and they were traditional interviews that they had. After putting in the HR agile systems and processes in place, boom, things change. Faster hiring processes, collaboration in hiring teams. There is a continuous recruiter and hiring manager feedback that is provided so that the process is improved, and then you're not going through the whole process all the way for 6 months, and towards the end you realize you made a wrong hire. No, things are improving, as we are going through the process. Skill focused recruitment and greater focus on adaptability and collaboration. They try to apply it through performance management as well. Before they had annual reviews, which a lot of traditional organizations do, but they changed it to a continuous feedback conversation, coaching focused leadership, and agile goal and setting. So that is something that they did. They applied it to they That's okay, not a problem. They applied it to learning and development as well. Primarily that's how a lot of organizations do. They have traditional classroom learning, but yeah, they applied it differently. And now they have a continuous learning culture where learning is provided continuously, not in a classroom setting where you kind of set up a training and then, you kind of have training then provided to employees. But this was more of a continuous learning culture through providing various avenues to employees to learn. They implemented digital learning platforms, and then they also did leadership development, which was more on an agile, framework for the organization. They applied the same to their team structure as well. So now their more team structure was more collaborative. Uh, you know, the accountability improved. There was more innovation that was happening in the organization, and ultimately, this organization saw a drastic improvement overall in the way the organization functioned because of them implementing all these changes. Output, they had faster decision making, increased collaboration, greater employee empowerment, faster response to customer needs. And I think that is one of the strongest value that Agile can deliver, that you were able to deliver. Faster response to your customer, not only just faster, but you're able to deliver the value that the customer truly wants. And then there was improved innovation, and more adaptable workforce. There's another example for you here. Microsoft. We know Microsoft, as an organization. And under their current leadership, which is Satya Nadella, they made a shift from the traditional siloed culture to a more collaborative, growth-oriented, and agile way of working. And ultimately, all of this has led to the culture of the organization ultimately shifting to being a more collaborative, growth oriented organization. We're hearing a lot about Microsoft in the news right now. They're doing amazing work right now, and that has happened in the last couple of years because of the transformation their current leadership brought. It's not just the leadership. HR has played, and we discussed how HR can really support. HR has played a major role by modernizing some of their HR processes, primarily performance management, learning, leadership development, and employee feedback practices, which has led to the transformation of this organization. So, just a reflection for you, Han, and you kind of already have this happening because you kind of work with a lot of clients that are looking to make those improvements and change, you know, to really maybe, when you're working with your clients more to try and figure out where is it that they're facing the challenges right now, whether it's adaptability, collaboration, decision making, engagement, and innovation. And primarily, as we have looked through the slides, across all of these areas, we can apply the agile mindset to really support looking at things differently, to be able to provide that value to the customer in the way the customer wants, right? And making it more customer centric, whether it is external customer or internal customer, which is the employees as well. So that's a little bit of a reflection. here for you. I'll leave with you. But essentially, it's really small steps, and we've kind of discussed all of this already. If there is an area where we think things are not working fine, start with that one process that needs improvement. Gather the employee and leadership feedback, encourage continuous conversation instead of annual only reviews. And you already shared a great example there. I think the organization must have seen the change that happened, by just moving from a siloed approach to a more collaborative approach because they involve the operation manager into the HR review discussion. So I think that really shows how imbibing the HR agile culture, things can really look different, right? Creating more collaborative collaboration across team. You shared an example using data and insight to guide decisions. So I think you might have utilized data for that as well. Focusing on employee experience and adaptability. And then ultimately, it is about continuously learning, refining, and improving. That's essentially what Agile is, right? So going back to the initial diagram, the circle, it is a continuously learning approach. So it's not about changing everything at once, and you already mentioned that, and I'm glad we already discussed that at the beginning. It's about building a culture that continuously learns, adapts, and improve, right? So that's essentially what it is. There is an upcoming Agility in HR workshop in case Han you would be interested. It's happening, it's a weekend batch, it's happening in June. There is another one that might come up in July as well. So in case you're interested, the details will be in the slide deck that we will share with you. And I don't know if you have any questions in the moment, feel free to ask me.
Not at this point, but great information. Thank you very much for sharing. I love it.
No problem, Han. I really appreciate you reaching out and being available for this webinar. Feel free to reach out to us, any one of us here at Agilizing. There is my contact details in the slide deck as well. Feel free to reach out if you have any other questions. But yeah, again, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you very much, you too.
Take care. Bye bye.